We're bringing you boots on the ground insight from the ranchers, conservationists, and partners who are helping to preserve the best of the Golden State for generations to come. Join the California Rangeland Trust for inspiring stories of resilience, innovation, and hope as we get tuned into the land.
Welcome to Tuned Into the Land. I am your host, Michael Delbar, CEO of the California Rangeland Trust. As summer winds down and students return to school, we're excited to highlight a unique educational program that's training the next generation of ranch managers. We've heard from many of our landowner partners and friends within the industry about the growing challenges surrounding the workforce and the need for greater opportunities for workforce development. With fewer and fewer young people stepping up to take the reins from today's ranch and farm managers, the future of our food production is at a critical juncture. Currently, the average age of U.S. farmers and ranchers is 58, meaning we have a limited window to train and equip the next generation to succeed the current generations in this essential work. Today, we're turning our eyes to a small junior college in Northern California, Feather River College in the quaint city of Quincy, California. This college is making great strides with its innovative Bachelor of Science program in Equine and Ranch Management, the first of its kind in California. To talk more about this groundbreaking program, I'm joined by Professor Russell Reid, the Agriculture Department Chair and Professor of Equine and Ranch Management, and a driving force behind this initiative. Russell has been with the college since 1976 and has played a pivotal role in shaping its foundation and direction. In our conversation, we explore how the program is preparing students for ranch management, successes and challenges of this relatively new offering, and how it's helping to address the critical need for workforce development in ranching. So without further ado, let's welcome Professor Russell Reid to the podcast.
Good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Feather River College?
You bet. I think one of the key, when you live a long time, there's a lot to talk about. But I think that one of the things that come to mind is how I really got into agriculture is my earlier influence was when I was a little boy. My great-grandfather immigrated from Ireland, and he developed a ranch in the Delta, just kind of south of you guys in Walnut Grove in that country. He built the levees and planted an orchard and farmed. He had a bunch of farm ground, good ground down there. And so after then, my grandfather took over the ranch. But I thought was really interesting. I had to reflect back on this when I was much older. But my great grandfather got hooked up with an Italian that really helped him run the ranch, and that family was like the kind of the core of the ranch. And so what happened is that his son worked with my grandfather, and they were running the ranch together, and which is kind of neat. This Italian gentleman's mother was the one that kind of cooked for the whole ranch. And it was such a diverse group of folks that it was two generations coming together for agriculture. And so I didn't live on the ranch, but my grandfather would pick me up. When I was a little boy, I was 2 and 3 years old. He'd pick me up and I'd follow him around. It was such a great experience. It showed me how people worked hard, had a good time, so many different cultures working together. And it was just such a positive experience. Now, I took that with me my whole life. When I was young, 4, 5, 6 years old, my grandfather I was his first grandchild. So he drugged me around everywhere. Now, the reason why I'm setting that kind of set the tone for me. I was in high school. I worked up here in the mountains up here outside of Quincy. I ran a bunch of horses when I started when I was really young. At 14 years old, I was working with horses. So that's how I got into the horse part of it. And then I told my grandfather, I'll never forget that day, that I said, I want to go to college and learn more about agriculture. I want to go to Cal Poly. And he was devastated. He would say, you could be a surgeon or a doctor. That's what he believed in me. And I went, are you kidding me? I barely can get into Cal Poly. I can't do that. But he wouldn't accept it. But he was really proud when I went. He came around. He thought it was pretty neat. I went to Cal Poly. I learned not only more about horses, which is my passion at that time. I started looking about working with cows and was in a bunch of projects at Cal Poly, their beef unit, and a bunch of stuff that I got involved with ag business. Then I got my first job out of college up in Sierra Valley up here, quote unquote, running a ranch in Vinton, a little town of Vinton, and met everybody in Sierra Valley. Because I was a young kid, and those old Swiss Italians would come up to me and tell me what I knew about ranching. I must have been a genius because I went to college, and they never went to school. And so I went, well, I'm kind of starting to figure out real quick. I don't know what I think I know. You guys know a lot more than I do. I should be asking you instead of you asking me. So I worked on that ranch for a while. Then I decided to go to graduate school because I said to myself, I can sit on this tractor and cut hay and work on the ranch. I could do that when I'm old. And guess what I'm doing today? The same damn thing. And I love it. By the way, I love it. And so at that time, I got up here and I went to school in Sacramento, got my graduate work done, and came back up here saying that, and I started a business, a little horse stable and a resort up in Lake Basin area up here in this country, and then started working part-time at the college. They had a job available, and I kind of took it part-time, and I got a job there. And in 1980, I had this bright idea. I had a bunch of horses that had nothing to do in the wintertime. So I decided, I said, well, let's get these horses and we'll just bring them to the college and I'll start a horse program. And they let me do it. I don't know why they did, but they did. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the progress that we've made. And now it's a pretty big deal. I didn't expect it to be this big. So that's how I got started.
You mentioned the Sierra Valley and Vinton. That valley is absolutely gorgeous. We have a number of ranches up there with conserved. And I think we ran some numbers, and it's roughly about, Rangeland Trust alone has about 25% of the valley permanently protected. It's a pretty special place. Yes.
I think you got Jared Spurlock's ranch there, that Bar One's, and I think he's with you guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's quite a few of them there, and it's very important that we keep that in ranching families and in ranching. I appreciate what you're doing there.
Well, we're pretty proud of it and proud of our landowner partners up there. Feather River is considered a junior college or a 2-year college, and that's primarily what it is. But in 2016, you started this 4-year degree in Equine and Ranch Management. What was the goal at the time? What were you aiming to accomplish by creating a 4-year program?
What started it is that we knew that our students wanted to stay at FRC. But we can only go so far with our 2-year degree. And the way the structures hang up, you can't kind of hang around very long because you can't get credit. You can't take a class twice. So you're almost out of classes in that 2-year run. So I think what got us going is this idea of we wanted an opportunity to do a better job with our students. And we knew, and to this day, I still am a strong believer in this, that it's just the repetition of the coursework that you need to have, especially with these folks that are just being involved in the business that haven't had the experience. They just need it. They need that time. If you're going to learn how to ride a horse, you just can't jump on and hope not to fall off. You're going to have to put some effort. And so that was really our core. We wanted to keep our good students, and there was plenty of them that we really wanted. And they said, and it was kind of interesting. I'll tell you the story behind that. As soon as we got this degree, our first graduating class, we had 25 students, the first graduating class. 20 of those 25 students were already students that already came to Feather River College, that came back to get their degree.
Wow.
So we kind of knew we were on the right track when that happened. But it was kind of interesting, the politics, and because it was a pilot program, and we were the only ag program. And we had some great people at the chancellor's office, community college chancellor's office, really fighting for our program, because it was the only ag one and the first of the kind. And they said, what program are we going to have to plow the snow first? And they said, well, we think this guy up here and his crew have done a pretty good job so far, and maybe they can carry this thing through to the end, which we did. And we actually got our second 4-year degree just recently in fire science.
Oh, really?
It's a pretty neat degree. Yeah, it's really good. It's a fire science and ecological, and it kind of ties into our program. It's not in our department, but there's in their environmental side. For a small college now, we've got 2 bachelor's programs. So what we wanted to do is just provide those upper division classes that were more intense. As you know, that there's so many in the college world, you have to take all these general eds and the history and the math. And once you get plow through all that, you get to take the classes that you really are interested in, beef genetics and range management and soil science, all those things that are up on the upper end of it where the students really got their interest. So that's kind of how we kind of went through that system. The university experience is the university experience. There's a lot of students that belong in that university environment. And there's a lot of students that really thrive in our system too, because they come up here. They don't know they want to go into college. They just said, well, I don't know. My parents want me to go to college. I guess I'll go. And then they kind of get involved in the college, and we get them busy right from the get-go, getting their hands dirty. And they said, I want to be here. We have some really good graduates that are out there and they're doing really well. But we have our lead horse, a faculty member, associate professor, is a graduate of our program. And she went to Colorado and got her undergraduate there and got her graduate degree in equine education. We hired just recently one of our 4-year graduates that also got a master's, and she come back and she's helping us as associate faculty. Our head rodeo coach right now went through our program for 2 years, graduated from here, and then was transferred to Las Vegas. And then our ranch manager was one of our young guys that our 4-year degree, and he went out and worked in the ranching industry and came back, and we're hired him now, and he runs our ranching operations.
Well, I think that with those folks coming back, I think that speaks volumes for the school and the program.
Thank you.
They want to come back and they're bringing that knowledge and experience and wanting to share that with the students. I think that says a lot. In addition to the Equine and Ranch Management program, tell us a little bit more about the ag program in general at Feather River.
So how we started is we identified 4 specific areas that somebody in our industry needed to know. And this, you'll relate to this a lot. One of them was livestock, whether it's cattle, whether it's horses. You needed to know something about that. More about that, I should say. Number 2, you need to know something about land. You had to know the ecology of the ground, what grass is and grass farming and range management, and what is good and what is bad, what is sustainable as the word goes, and what's good bit practices, what isn't. Then we had the third one of this was the business part. You had to be a business person. You just had to be. Sorry. If you don't, you won't make it. And then we have an ag mechanics program that we kind of put in there where we have ag shop welding and tractor driving and irrigation. So those are kind of the pieces that, and I think you can see by those 4 things that I kind of wanted to accomplish. And we try to put that together in our curriculum. And we're limited because we are a small college. We can't do everything. Not like my mouth is always dropped when I see what the universities, the ag schools can do. They can do some pretty amazing things that we can't do. We're just not big enough. We just can't do it. So we kind of focus and try to get somebody a student to be able to experience specific topics in each one of those areas that I talked about.
So you had your first year in the program, you had 25, if I remember you said, enrolled in the program. Mm-hmm. How many are in the ag department or the ag programs altogether?
Okay. We start off each year with, which is kind of at our capacity, with between, I would say, about 60 to 75 students that we start off at the beginning of the fall. Because remember, we're in this cycle of a 4-year cycle. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of those students, we're hoping like 25 or so, that will run all the way through the end to get their degree, their 4-year degree. But some of them will only go for the 2 years, get their 2-year degree, and then transfer on, which we encourage, to a 4-year institution because of what their interests are. And so that's kind of the numbers that we go with. So every year we're going to have, we have anywhere, if we add the rodeo students in and all the ag students, we probably have over 100 ag students, but they're in different places. They're doing different stuff.
So you mentioned that you've worked at Feather River since 1976.
Yeah.
So you've probably seen a lot of changes,
Yes, sir.
not just only in the school, but in the education system and how things are taught, how we are teaching our students. What difference do you see in today's students than you saw when you first started teaching?
Thank you, Michael, for those very difficult and good questions.
Well, there's a lot of, you have changes in technology, you have a political climate that's completely different, changes in industry, changes in willingness of the students to talk and tell stories. What are those changes that you've seen?
You know what I think is the key, and that gets back. That's why I'd like to talk about that background that I started with when I was young. I thought that I had such a passion for being around people in agriculture. I had such a great influence, and that Sierra Valley influence was just one more thing. They were great people up there. I mean, the old families, the Roberti families, I couldn't tell you all the Swiss Italians and Dodas, Madalena, all of those famous ranchers that were there and still there to this day were such an influence on me. Those old guys were so neat to me. They were so good to me as being a young man. Well, I wanted to see if I could teach that. I wanted to see if I could teach that passion so they could have that same kind of a feel. And it's a value system, and it's not only a career, but as we said in our industry over and over again, it is a way of life, but it's more of a value system. And you just kind of like the people that are in the same thing that you're doing. All my close friends are all in agriculture. What a surprise. And so what I see difference is that we're seeing, and that's this generational thing. We talked about losing our ranching community. They're getting older and older. Well, what I see has changed, Michael, is the idea that people weren't in agriculture, but they kind of want to get on the boat. That's what I see the change is. We're seeing a lot more students that have never had this experience that I had. So now it's a big challenge to say, well, how can I teach that? And, there's a rubrics. We have curriculum, and it's a little hard to teach values at the same time you're trying to teach somebody what different types of soils are, or the different breeds of cattle and horses. But we try. And I think that's what I start seeing the difference is that we're seeing more and more people that are not in agriculture being involved, wanting to get in agriculture than I've seen at the beginning. Most of the people in the beginning really had some kind of connection. Now we're seeing less and less. That's kind of the evolution of what's going on. Now I have to admit, our intercollegiate rodeo program has really helped us because that's a big draw for our ranching families. Rodeo and that, and so we're having some really good ranching families like yourself that have come to Feather River College, and primarily, not all of them, they're involved in the rodeo program.
What do you think's driving that interest of folks of students that are not coming from those ag backgrounds and wanting to get into it?
What I think it is that I think it's basically why, we're so strong on the horse side of it. So that's a big deal for us. And just people, I think they're really interested in animals. I think it's the animal side that they're saying, I really like being around horses, or I think that some of our experience this idea of working around cows. But once you kind of get that hooked onto them, you'll see that they really have a passion for the animals. I think that's the driving force. But the challenge for us in education is that we have to tie in that passion for the land. See, that's and I think that's part of it too. I think it's that passion because you don't have animals. We don't have livestock production without the land. And there's such a connection there. I think that what it is that between the livestock part and the land part, I think they think that that's a pretty neat combo that I might want to get involved with. I might want a career there if somebody will pay me to be involved. And there's jobs out there. There's because of, as we talked about, this idea of there's a lot more openings coming up. But I think they're surprised, not the ranching families, but the new folks that are just kind of getting involved in it. They're surprised what a cultural responsibility it is. I call it a cultural responsibility in agriculture.
That's spot on. Well, we hear quite often from our landowner partners and just being in the industry, how hard it is. And you touched on this earlier about how hard it is to get employees and finding those that have the skills. It's great to hear that there's interest amongst those that don't come from those ag backgrounds, but that workforce development is a key part of training folks and of the skills. The culture part, they've got it or they don't, and we hope that we can instill more of that into some. But that workforce development is really critical.
Michael, you're right on there, and that's what we thought too. But it's amazing if we can expose these young folks at 17, 18 years old. When you mentioned that, I just keep flashbacks of students that are. And primarily because we get a lot of young women in our program, because that's kind of the driving force now. Because fortunately you balance that off. There's a lot of our young men in rodeo come back, and now we're getting a lot more interest in the horse part, showing horses and competing in that side. A lot more males coming in that side. I can't tell you the success that we have when we put. And especially when we have a lot of our students work, you can imagine that we run our whole institute, our whole program, feeding, irrigation, all that by student workers we do that intentionally, not because we're running some chain gang here, but we're trying to get these students actually to go to work on campus where we can yell at them. No, but we can. The interesting part,
it gets them used to it,
Yeah. Yeah. Get used to it. Yeah. Well said. That's it. Someone's going to yell at you. It's just a matter of time. So what I think is the key, which I think is really kind of fun, get in there and drive. I've never driven a skid steer before. Well, get in there and try. And, it's pretty ugly at first. At the end of the day, after a year or two working there, it is amazing how handy these guys get. And especially the folks that have never had that experience before. And then they really eat it up. Because, success breeds this idea that, I really want to do this because I'm successful. And hopefully that there's going to fill that job that we hear all the time. That, you don't have any people in the field. Well, I said, I know the ones that Tyler Tatum, who runs our ranch operation, he got, this is ranching 101. I'm going to tell you right now. As soon as he graduated, like 20 minutes after he graduated, he got a job. I bet you Billy Flournoy up there likely. Well, he got a job with Billy Flournoy because his main guy that ran his ranch graduated from our program. And he was buddies with this guy when he was going to school. So he hired him with about 3 other kids that went to Feather River. And so he got a job right off the bat working at Flournoy's, punching cows. And then he went down the valley and went different places and came back. Well, he's a wonderful young man. And I can't say enough about him. He's an all-star as far as we're concerned for being young. But he was a kid from Chester. He up here in our country, which is, 25, 30 miles north of us. He didn't know much about this business. He didn't know anything. You go work for the Flournoys, you better know what you're doing. So I'm real proud of him because when he took this job, I said, now, you can't run our pivot off of horseback. You're going to have to fix the fence. You're going to have to get off your horse to fix the fence. And I said, is that okay? And he goes, yeah, it's about that time. I need to go do some other thing. But that's the kind of student that we're looking for. That's the kind of students we can put out there, I hope, and they're going to get work. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but at least that's what our goal is. And I think we have the experiences curriculum-wise, and then our facilities are wise. And we've always been from the beginning that we had to have a top-notch facility. If we didn't, we can't demonstrate. Like when we develop our ranching part, which is on the beef side, put in a pivot, a small pivot, but we put a pivot in and we put wheel lines in for the one simple reason. To give students an opportunity in our irrigation class, they say, this is a pivot, this is how it's operated, this is a wheel line, they're a pain in the butt to turn, but you can have to learn to move them, that kind of stuff. And it works. They get that experience. And we have feed grinder, feed processor we got from Kirby. They're good folks down there in the valley. They're good for, I hate to put an ad in for them, but they've really taken care of us. And we process all our hay when we feed all our dry lot, our bulls and our cows in the summer. And so students take care of all that. Where did I learn that? Cal Poly. That's where I learned that. I said, if you don't have that opportunity, you can't teach them.
We were very fortunate to have been left a ranch down in Rio Grande.
Oh, yeah.
So Sheila Varian, the former owner, left the Rangeland Trust, the ranch, knowing that it would be conserved and sold to a conservation buyer when she was gone. So initially, we were looking at how we could partner with a college to turn the ranch into a living laboratory where students can learn how to fix fence, change pipe, do those practical skills that one needs to successfully run a ranch. We ended up learning that there were some logistical challenges to that idea, and we ended up selling the property to a wonderful family. And they're committed to honoring the history of the property, stewarding the land, and serving the community. I bring this up because that experience shed some light on the fact that there's a huge demand from our landowner partners and others for students or for workers with those basic skills to enter into the ranching industry. We hear it all the time from our landowner partners that I need someone that I can hire that has the skills, those basic ranch skills, fixing fence, changing pipe, opening red caps, do all those things that I can put in place in our operation. So it's nice knowing that Feather River has that type of program in place. Since we're in the business of conserving land in perpetuity, we understand how critical it is to have people coming up in the ranks who can manage these lands into the future. So you had several that have come back to be part of the college curriculum there that have gone through the program. When you say you think they like it, what feedback have you received from the students that have gone through the program?
Well, I think it's a lot has to do with what we were already mentioned before, is that they appreciated the kind of the launch of their experiences. And I think that I kind of come to mind, I think about the horse part of it, that one of our most famous alumnus in the horse side is world champion Nick Dowers, and he's one of the best top reigning, probably one of the best top 10 riders in the country. And he got his start at Feather River College, and he never forgets us. He comes every year and helps us with our horse sale. But if he's doing a clinic, if he's out there, he will mention Feather River College. And how does he mention it? What does he say? He says, it got me pointed in the right direction. I didn't learn everything from them. Trust me. It's not that. It was the direction that got me going. But I think the key, what he was responding was, we network with people and we invite a lot of guest speakers in to our program. JP goes, several times a year, we have our students. He takes a bunch of students out to Montana and stops at all these breeders, these different operations, and they tour the facilities. They're a band of maybe only 10, 12 students that are touring different ranches from Montana to Nevada and that's the experiences that students will come back and say, you really got me interested. You got me motivated to move forward. And then they got to take it from there. We really are kind of, when we kind of think about ourselves, we do kind of think about ourselves as saying, well, we're going to, it's kind of like farming. We can plant the field, but, somebody's got to take care of it. And so we're planting the seed and hoping it gets up, and then now it's your turn. And you already asked this question earlier before about this idea of education and how we've changed. And they just knew how to do it. It's like good horsemen. They didn't share what they did. They just were good. And then we started poking them. Could you come over and tell these kids about how you start colts so they're not going to buck you off? And then we started looking at people and says, why does your grass grow way better than my grass next door? Well, they started poking them and saying, well, this is what I do. Whoa, really? And so there was education on people being good land stewards, good herdsmen, way before we started teaching it. It's just that we started bringing this more forward, and we started to get these folks to talk a little bit more and get some people really interested. in listening, that's the most important part. And of course, this internet business and what we're doing here is just sharing our ideas with a whole bunch of people, right?
So what do you tell people that think that a degree is not a requirement or may not be helpful in this industry?
Well, I'll probably answer that in two ways. There are some kids that we have coming up that are pretty darn good because they've learned from their parents and they're pretty handy. And they won't have any trouble going back to the ranch, running the ranch the way that they were taught. But then again, sometimes I say, well, then you're probably good. But if you're going to get that ranch eventually and you want to get it better, you better get some ideas. So that's what I would say. College is a place for ideas. That's what it was created for. Sharing knowledge and skills, both those together. There's people that we already talked about that. People have never had the experience before. So where else are they going to get it? See, we're kind of a Disneyland of experiences because that Disneyland of experiences, it's a make-believe world in college. If you flunk a class, you flunk a class, big deal. You know what I mean? If you flunk a job, you got nothing to eat. I think that when you look at college, it's this opportunity to explore different ideas and ideas. That's a good place to be for certain people. And that's what I say. I'm not going to. I've had way too many good cowboys and too good girls that they were smart. College was not difficult for them, but I just couldn't keep them there because they just had to go out and do it. For example, Nick Dowers is a good example of that. They just had to go out and learn for themselves. They went to their own college. I really respect that. But some of the people are going to say, is that you? And some of the people said, nah, that's not me. Well, then let me see if we can help you. That's all it is. College is just another way of helping. It's just helping the person get better. And I think it's an opportunity to explore and fail, but then again, have an opportunity to succeed too. Because failure and mistakes was my best professor in college. I could tell you that right now. Because whatever I've learned is that I screwed up. And if I screw it up, I can say, I don't know if I want to do that again. Luckily, it wasn't too bad of a screw up. And I said, where else are you going to get an opportunity to flunk that class? And I said, well, why did you flunk that class? Because I didn't do the work. Mm-hmm. Well, didn't we learn a lesson? Now, do you want to do the work or don't you want to do it?
So do you have any goals for the program in the future? Any changes to it?
Well, as I got one foot out the door, I'm trying to get my crew and get those guys and they're so good that they really don't need me. And I do see a lot of young and ideas coming in that, well, that's not the way I did it. And now I'm feeling like the grandpa rancher to the son, you know what I mean? Passing the torch. Mm-hmm. So I think the future is going to be for them is, I think ag business as a curriculum. I think we got Rick Lenhart there that's doing a great job. And I think I'm really pushing hard to get more business into it. You talk to anybody in the industry and our advisory committees, first thing out of their mouth, whether it's a vet or a horse trainer, well, I wish I would have taken more business classes. First thing out of their mouth. And I think we're trying to emphasize that. And I think we've got some good courses and some good things that we're doing there. I think that I would like to see us have more ways of getting students out of here and doing more internship. We require in our 4-year degree, by the way, they have to spend a summer internship. They have to at least spend a summer working, and it's a college class. So we monitor them. We put them in good places where they learn something. They're just not sitting in a baler all the time. They have to go learn how to cut hay and to do other parts of it. So we kind of monitor those internships. But I think the more we get students out there looking and seeing what's going on in our agriculture community, the better off we are. So those are kind of the directions that I'm hoping to leave them with. And we're always looking at our curriculum to make things better and easier for students to succeed.
Sounds like you've done some great succession planning or training the next generation, so to speak, internally with your retirement, I assume, coming up at some point. How do you feel the program has done for the ranching community and training that next generation?
Well, I think we can get better. I think we can get better because that next generation is changing, and we have to make sure that we're preparing students for industry and they have those skills that they need for that industry today. It's so nice to have our young faculty come in because they're more attuned to that, because I have to go back and over a wide span of time to say, what are you going to get prepared for? Well, it's changed totally. So the curriculum has to change. But I think that what's going to be important is that we continue to set high values that are important. And I think, not to give you a pat on the back, but, the Rangeland Trust his whole purpose is to preserve agricultural land for future, right? Well, our job is to try to get people to be able to manage those things in the future. So I think we're working on the same plane together. We're just like different ways of doing it. But if we can preserve agriculture, which I think is a job in itself, by the way, if we can preserve it, then I think we can have the folks there to keep it going. But it's real important that we start to realize that people are looking at us a lot different. The industry is looking to us a lot differently than they did before. We have a lot more responsibility to be better land stewards, better herdsmen, treat our livestock better, treat our land better, get it to produce without a lot of inputs into that production. All those things are pressures that are being put on us, not by ourselves, but by other people. And we have to have the young people in the future to be able to handle that.
Thank you for recognizing the importance of the land. I know that's not a surprise at all. It's intuitive to all of us, but some folks need to hear that, how important the protection of the land resource is. And without the land, we can't do the practices. We can't produce the food and the fiber that we all need. And of course, all the open space and the wildlife habitat and all those things that go with it. And the work you're doing at Feather River College is this program is amazing. And it's so closely linked to the work we're doing. And we want to thank you for doing that and providing that opportunity for our youth and providing the education and the training that these folks need to get into the industry. As we've heard from our landowner partners, they really need that. And they need folks coming into the business that have those basic skill sets. And you and your program are doing an amazing job at providing that. Because as you touched on, if we don't have land stewards that are equipped with the basic skills and knowledge to work on these lands, we're going to see these rangelands disappear. So we want to thank you, Professor Reid, for accomplishing that goal and a wonderful program up there at Feather River College.
Thank you. And not to make this a mutual thank you note, but, the goals of preserving and trying to keep our agriculture, industry going by preserving land and putting the value of that land, we couldn't produce a product that didn't have a place to go. So you're doing a pretty important step into what, the end product for me in our program, in our students. So I appreciate that. It was a fun talk. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you for being part of it.
You bet. You bet.
We hope that you enjoyed this discussion with Russell Reid. To learn more about the Equine and Ranch Management program, you can visit the college's website at www.frc.edu. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to leave us a review and comment. We want to hear from you. Hit that follow and notification button so you can be notified when the next episode is released. And if you want to connect more with the work that the Rangeland Trust is doing, you can visit our website at rangelandtrust.org or follow us on social media at Rangeland Trust. This closes a gate on another episode of Tune Into the Land. I'm your host, Michael Delbar, and thanks for listening.